We're going to start from Vav Vav, Perak Vav, Posuk Vav. L'chein moral of Bnei Yisrael. Hashem says to Moshe, therefore tell the Jewish people, Ani Hashem, Otzisi etzchem mitach sivlos Mitzrayim. I'll take you out from under the sufferings of Egypt. Vitzalti eschem me'avodosam, and it will save you from their work. V'galti eschem b'zor netuya u'b'shrotim gedolim, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgment. In great judgment on the Egyptians. Lokachti eschem li lo'om, and I will take you for my people. V'yishi lechem le'lokim, and I will be your God. V'datem ki ani Hashem Elokechem motzi eschem mitach Mitzrayim, and then you will know that I am your God who took you out from Egypt. These are the four expressions of Geula, of redemption. So what do we have? Votzeisi, I will take you out. V'tzalti, I will save you. V'ga'alti, I will redeem you. V'lokachti eschem li lo'om, and I will take you from my people, which is Sinai. This is the fourth expression of redemption. And this is why at the Seder, we have 4 cups of wine. The 4 cups of wine correspond to the Dal L'Shani Geula, to the 4 expressions of redemption. Meir Simcha V'Tvince explains, we know that wine, rabbinically, if a non-Jew touches a Jew's wine, a Jew's not permitted to drink the wine. If a non-Jew manufactures the wine, manufactured by a non-Jew, even if there's a question, even if he doesn't touch it, but it's actually considered the non-Jew's wine, a Jew's not permitted to drink it, rabbinically. Why? So the Gemara explains that because it's a question of what? Of assimilation. Because since wine is the beverage of the social beverage, ultimately you socialize over wine, it will cause assimilation. You will marry their daughters, and therefore, to prevent that, to keep the distance between the Jew and the non-Jew at that level, the Jew is not permitted to drink the wine of the non-Jew, and even the non-Jew touches the wine of a Jew, you're not permitted. So we speak about Geula. Here we're being extricated and identified as a separate people, God's people, and there's this 4-stage process. I will take you out, I will save you, I will redeem you, and I will take you from my people. So to maintain the effect of those 4 levels of redemption, we have wine. So the Dalit Kosas, the 4 cups of wine at the Seder, are on specifically wine. And the Gemara talks about, what about, does the wine have to be diluted? Let's say it's not diluted wine. Does one fulfill the mitzvah of cherus? Because you're actually expressing redemption. A person, the free man, drinks wine which is palatable, so therefore potable. So if it's too strong, he doesn't drink it. So even though you've drunk 4 cups of wine, but since it's not within the context of cherus, of a free person, because a free person drinks it diluted, it's a discussion in the Gemara. But the 4 cups of wine correspond to the 4 expressions of redemption. Now, the last expression of redemption is, V'lokachti eschem li li'om, I will take you from my people, v'yisi lochem le'lokim. And this is Sinai. V'datem, and then you will know, ki ani Hashem Elokechem, hamotzi eschem mitach sivlos Mitzrayim. You will know that I am your God who took you out from under the sufferings of Egypt. So when will we know that God took us out of Egypt? When we have the Sinai experience, then in retrospect, we'll know that whatever transpired earlier, it was Hashem took us out. That's what the 4th expression of Geula is saying, right? I will take you as my people. I will be your God, v'datem, and you will know, ki ani Hashem Elokechem, hamotzi eschem mitach Mitzrayim. Then you will know that I am your God who took you out of Egypt, under the sufferings of Egypt. You read, as the plagues begin, what is the value of the Makos? There are many contexts of what level to recognize Ani Hashem. I am God in the midst of the land. There's no other God like myself. Continuous. All these revealed miracles is to identify himself that he's the omnipotent being and no other power exists other than him. And yet, when we read the 4 expressions of Gula, the Dal Shani Gula, only after the 4th, when I will take you from my people, in retrospect, you will know from Sinai that whatever transpired prior to this moment, it was me who did it. But the Torah says explicitly, at every makkah, at every plague, at the level of God's revealing himself, it was evident that it's God, and this is not some kind of deity, or this is power. So how do we understand the simple understanding of what the Torah is saying? So we had explained many times, not necessarily on this point, but many times, the famous Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. The Rambam writes in the Fundamentals of Torah that how do we know that Moshe was God's spokesman? How do we know that the word of Moshe is the word of Hashem? Because Sinai, we openly saw Hashem speaking to Moshe, telling him such and such. But anything beyond Sinai, how do we know that Moshe's word is the word of Hashem? So Rambam writes, because since at Sinai, all the Jews were there, and all the Jews were in a state of prophets, and we all witnessed personally, it wasn't hearsay, it wasn't something we extrapolated, but rather we saw how Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, go tell the Jews such and such, tell them such and such. So we openly witnessed how Hashem had chosen Moshe to be a spokesman. And as a result of this, Hashem says at Sinai, U'b'cho yaminu l'olam. From now going forward, they will believe in you forever that you are my spokesman. You are my prophet. And it will never be questioned who you are. Therefore, your word is my word. Why? Because he says, anybody whose belief is based on miracles, ein belibo el dofi. It's something which is fickle. Why? He says, whatever Hashem did, Hashem, these are Rambam's words, Hashem split the sea and had the sea close it on the Egyptian. Why? Because the Egyptians had to be destroyed. Why was there man in the Midbar, in the desert, this miracle food? Because the Jews had to be fed. Why was there the Be'er Shel Miriam, the wellspring of Miriam? The Jews needed water. Why was Korach? Why was he swallowed up in the ground by the earth? Because Korach and his community had to be punished. So every event that took place through Moshe Rabbeinu, it wasn't to prove who Moshe was, that he was God's agent, but rather every event, these miraculous events, were done to bring about a certain result. Because a person could say that whatever Moshe had done, maybe it was witchcraft. It came about through witchcraft. And Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest sorcerer that he even pulled the wool over the Egyptians' eyes. What he said was God's doing, it was witchcraft. So nobody could even consider saying that under any circumstance. We openly witnessed how Hashem had spoken to Moshe and said to Moshe, go tell them such and such. Those are the Rambam's words. Meaning that the Torah is eternal. The Torah is immutable. The Torah is the word of Hashem. So even though that's the takeaway when we're in Egypt, but what happens if somebody would say, how do you know? How is it irrefutable fact that the Torah is divine as the word of Hashem? You never know. Well, the Jews in Egypt, they were gullible. The Jews in Egypt, they experienced it this way. Very often we're impressed initially, then later, after reflection, we believe and we understand that maybe it wasn't so simple. Maybe we were too quick to see it in that light. Maybe it was different. So Hashem says, therefore, Sinai, it's fact, it's irrefutable fact. When I will speak to Moshe, it will be in the presence of every Jew at Sinai, hearing Moshe go tell them such and such. And as a result of that experience, witnessing it, factually that Moshe is God's spokesman, B'choy yamin olam, the Jews will believe in you forever that you are my spokesman. Therefore, your word is my word. That's Rambam. So that's exactly v'lokachti. In Egypt, we saw the hand of Hashem. And it was, but you understand, it's not enough. To maintain and to communicate that the Jewish people are an eternal people, and the word and the script we live by, and the prescription of life is divine, where is it rooted? It's rooted in Sinai. So only after Sinai, in retrospect, is it irrefutably in our minds and knowing that whatever preceded Sinai was the hand of Hashem. But if not for Sinai, that God openly took us to be his people, and Moshe Rabbeinu was a spokesman, one is able to say, you never know. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu was a greater sorcerer than all of them, and he deceived us all. So that's the fourth expression of Gula. Lokachti eschem li lo, v'yisi lechem le'elokim. When I will take you with my people, I will be your God. V'datem, then you will know ki ani Hashem Elokeichem, hamotzi eschem mitach siv Mitzrayim. Then you will know in retrospect that I'm the one who took you out from under the sufferings of Egypt. That's how we explained it in the past with the Rambam. So I said, why would a person consider saying this? I mean, the greatest sorcerers of the world, but the Egyptians, after the 10th plague, it was clear it was the hand of Hashem. They drove us out. Why did we have to wait for Sinai? So he'd say, maybe, because you never know. Maybe Moshe, even as Rambam says, he even duped the Egyptians. He outsmarted them and he deceived them. But really, it wasn't the word of Hashem. Maybe he's not God's agent. Okay? So I said something last year, which is interesting. We find that Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, go down to the Nile, and Paro, when he's doing his bodily functions, you tell him. What was this all about? Because Paro put himself forth as a deity. A deity doesn't have bodily functions. And because he wanted to portray himself as this God, therefore he concealed that he has bodily functions. Moshe, you're going to catch him in the act. You can go down to the Nile and you're going to catch him doing his bodily functions. Now the question is this. Paro was no fool. There's no secrets. Things that are impossible to conceal. So how did Paro even consider trying to pass himself off as a deity, where ultimately it's going to be found out that he does have bodily functions? It's inevitable that somebody's going to catch him down at the Nile, meaning one of his closest courtiers, his security team. They will know. So how could Paro pull this off without anyone knowing that he has bodily functions? So the answer is, I was looking for the source, which I saw in the past, of sorcerers. Paro was the greatest sorcerer. Nobody was at a level of Paro within the context of sorcery. Paro was able to conceal himself through witchcraft that he was invisible. He created all kinds of barriers and enclosures around himself that unless you were at his level of sorcery, it was impossible to find him, to locate him. Impossible. You couldn't find him. You know what happened? Moshe Rabbeinu found him. When Moshe Rabbeinu found him, that means he was able to break through all these enclosures and discover him. Paro was amazed. How did you find me? So how did Paro process it? And why was Moshe able to find him? Of course Moshe could find him. Because Moshe, as the agent of Hashem, is able to pierce any veil of impurity. Sorcery is rooted in impurity. If God says you're going to find him, you go and you cut through it all. Now, but Moshe understood why he was able to find him. But how did Paro process that? Paro processed that and says, I'm amazed. I thought I was at a level that nobody was my equal, and I was able to create this enclosure that it would be impossible to be found out that have bodily functions. And you were able to discover me. Evidently, you are no less than I am within the realm of sorcery. You understand? As a result of that, Paro attributed Moshe's ability, not that he's God's agent, that he's the greatest sorcerer. And what he's trying to pass off as being the act of God, God's action, it's really sorcery. Although it seems to be, but you never know. So what is the root of the question? What is the basis why one may question, is Moshe God's spokesman or it's sorcery? The basis for that question is Paro. Because Paro, being the greatest sorcerer, and nobody was able to out-sorcerer him, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to discover him. Now, at Kriyas Yamsuf, according to one medrash, there was one lowly survivor. Paro was the only one who survived Kriyas Yamsuf, because it says they all perished ad echod, up to one. Because the reason why the midrash says, why did Paro survive? That he should be able to go back to Egypt and share with Egypt all the miracles that took place at Kriyas Yamsuf, at the splitting of the sea, how all the Egyptian armies were destroyed in detail. So if Paro was able to go back, and now Paro lost the game, he lost it. How does he share what happened with the Egyptians? Is it God? Or did he share then, he let the cat out of the bag? He says, all that I've tried to put myself forth as a deity, Moshe Rabbeinu discovered me. He caught me at my game, because evidently he's a greater sorcerer than I am. Or he says, maybe he is. So the root of the question is Paro. And therefore Hashem says, the miracles of Egypt are not enough to prove that Moshe is God's representative, but rather when Hashem openly said to Moshe at Sinai, when all the Jews prophesied and witnessed this, Moshe, go tell them such and such, only then was it confirmed in retrospect that everything that had preceded Kabbalah Torah was the hand of Hashem, that Hashem took him out of Egypt, and this is not attributed to witchcraft.